it will certainly take more than PBOC's action. Actually, we think from here onwards, it's the fiscal policy that's actually increasingly more important. The PBOC, of course, also need to continue to lower the interest rates in the economy, because if you look at China's nominal growth, it has fallen to below 5%. While the average lending rate is also all-time low, but the gap between nominal growth and lending rate is the narrowest ever. So in that sense, Chinese interest rates are still too high.
So, Wei Yao, why do you think the PBOC decided to go with a 25 basis point cut to the 5-year? Why the 5-year loan prime rate as a way to help the property sector?
Well, because the 5-year loan prime rate is the reference rate for mortgage rates. So this is a very intentional move that the easing is targeted at the housing sector, and housing is still struggling. As we all know, if housing cannot stabilize, it's very hard for the economy to stabilize. So it's clear that the intention is clear here that the PBOC want to do more to stabilize housing.
Okay, but what more gets done, and how and when do you anticipate it will feed into the real economy, given that when you look at the 5-year loan prime rate, while it takes effect immediately, those existing mortgage holders don't stand to benefit from that cut until next year when that repricing is actually done?
Yeah, true. So the idea here is, hopeful. The hope is that lower mortgage rates could revive sales. But actually, the mortgage rates have fallen a lot over the past year or so. But the sales have not yet stabilized. So clearly, it's not just the interest rate, not the cost of funding for the households. It's also the confidence, the fact that the Chinese households have changed their long-term expectation for the housing prices. And there is also another very tricky problem is that the developers are still not able to finish the sold projects, so the households do not trust them. So this is another line of action that PBOC actually is now, the Chinese government in general is stepping up, basically channeling more liquidity to the developers. It's just a start. We need to see how effective it is. But we think with all the action in the second half, there is a chance that the housing can finally stabilize. But it's very hard to expect very strong recovery.
Wei Yao, can we go back to what you said earlier in the conversation, which we feel is critical, and that is the fiscal response. Major fiscal support is needed to restore confidence. Are we going to see that announced at the NPC?
We think they will do something. They will definitely announce something. I think that the discussion about adding another trillion special CGB, the overall fiscal deficit, we think should be higher this year than last year. Because last year, actually, the deficit shrunk compared to the previous year. So it was a fiscal contraction. But this year, we should see fiscal expansion. And if the Chinese government set a target of around 5% for the real GDP growth, then they should match it with a decent amount of fiscal expansion.